back, everybody. John and Debbie Morris with Integrity Training Systems on Real Talk 93.3. We hope you were here for our first segment. If you weren't, we have our good friends Josh and Rauchel Koehnemann on with us right now. And we're talking about what it takes to have a godly marriage. And what's neat is I think it's easier to have just a godly marriage than to have a godly marriage and business partnership too. So we both do both of those things. You know, I tell people all the time.
Take it to a different level, yeah.
Yes. I'm like, you know, a lot of times like you hear about people that are in a business partnership, you know, and they're not in a relationship. So I'm talking even a man and a man or a woman and a woman, you know, in the business partnership world. And you get to go home and talk bad about a situation that was bad for the day, right? Like you can go home and be like, this was so dumb. Well, that's not really how this works, you know, like because they're your spouse too. So there's times that those worlds, I mean, they're very meshed, you know, and so it's kind of funny. I know that early on in my relationship with Deb, I would come home sometimes from work and I'm one of those people that every once in a while I just have to stare at a blank wall. Like that's, you know, I'll just like zone out on a wall and that's how I kind of get my head back. Debbie doesn't do that. Like she has one mode and that's always on, you know, so like I'll come home and I might have just trained 16 clients and I'm staring at the wall and she'll be like, hey, did you have, and I'm just kind of like my head slowly turns like, oh my gosh, we're going to be talking about something right now about business, you know, and it's amazing because that's what makes us so successful. But it's funny because I had to come to this place in my mind where I'm like, that's how she is, and I have to be able to reciprocate that information because that's what's going to keep us moving forward and in business. And at the end of the day, the only reason I'm staring at the wall is because I've let my mind go blank. And so it was just something that I had to have a simple shift, and it made us better. But I mention that because I've talked to people that have been in similar situations, and they get mad about it. You know, it's like, I don't want to talk about this right now. It's like, well, then when do you talk about it? We're not going to talk about it at 3:30 in the morning. We can't talk about it on 10-minute breaks in between. It's like, when do you actually have that conversation? You know, so just being able to be in a place where you, again, you know, you look at a situation where every conversation you have with your spouse is a positive one. And then if you do have to hash something out, you do hash it out appropriately and you move on from it. And that's from a business or a relationship perspective. And I want to talk a little bit about the reason I'm mentioning all of this is the dangers that come out of letting yourself kind of build on this stuff. And I know that we were kind of talking a little bit about building a hedge of protection around your marriage. And when it comes to having conversations with people of the opposite sex, especially in business, it's pretty easy if you're texting someone of the opposite sex or you're having a business meeting, going to lunch, doing anything like that, to have a conversation slip into those bothersome moments, you know, where, well, you know, we were kind of having this conversation and this business happened and, you know, we got kind of annoyed about this. And I find that those situations become really dangerous because someone is always going to be on your side for the most part. So if you tell someone that someone was really mean to you, for the most part, they're going to be like, yeah, that sounds terrible. They were really mean to you. And so you kind of start to set yourself up with this scenario where you're putting yourself in a position to have somebody have an attraction to you or you have an attraction to what they're telling you that just isn't positive. So talk to us a little bit about that with you guys. You have a lot of employees and you have a lot of people you see on a regular basis. So how do you handle that as far as meetings with people of the opposite sex and text messaging and things like that?
I mean, for example, we would not go, and I wouldn't have a business meeting at a coffee shop with a man.
Right.
Like, I wouldn't set myself up for things like that. Like,
Yes.
if I take a lot of meetings with people of the opposite sex, same sex, whatever.
Of course.
But it's typically like at their home site. You
Right.
know, with
Correct.
a spouse, obviously we do houses.
Yes.
So
Yes,
I have
exactly.
to visit sites to see the house.
Yes.
Or I invite them into my showroom, things like that. So, you know, there's definitely boundaries of what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. We have to take, both of us, a lot of calls from same sex, opposite
Yes.
sex. You know, being friendly is one thing in business. Being overly friendly
Right.
is a different thing. You know, so when you are, I mean, you have to keep each other in mind.
Yes.
I'm just a straight shooter, so
I love
I'm
it.
all business. So I don't know if that, but my focus is business. When I'm doing business, my focus is if I'm talking to a woman in business, it's about what we're talking about.
Right.
I have really strict habits.
That's great.
So a lot of people, I'm not sure, like even she asked me to go to lunch, and I don't go to lunch with anyone.
Well, originally.
Originally,
yeah.
like,
You wouldn't go to lunch with me
and
before
then
you
I
were
saw
married.
her, and I was single at the time. I was like, hey, I do lunch, but I don't I get asked weekly to go to lunch with a vendor or rep, whoever,
Right.
and I just don't do that. I'm not because of any reason, because of going to lunch with a vendor. It's really just because I'm really strict on my diet and my habits.
Well, sure, yeah.
And so therefore, I'll do a coffee, but I never really get asked by, very many people now, because I think everyone knows.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, they know.
they're if you get my time, number one, you're
Right.
You're either special to me, or there's a reason you have my time, but
Yes.
I don't give my time to nobody.
Well, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the discipline that I'm talking about. That's something you've instilled to make sure that those types of things are done the way they're supposed to be done. And that's so important. Like you just said, it's like now the world acknowledges, well, Josh isn't going to come out and just talk to me about random stuff. If he's coming out, we're talking about what we're supposed to be talking about. And that's so important. We deal with that too. It's like when you're going to be meeting with someone, we always even tell our trainers, like, yeah, it's okay to be friendly. Like maybe you know what someone did for the weekend or something, but like they don't need to know about an argument that you had with your significant other.
Right.
They don't need to know about what craft your kid made for the week at school. Like it shouldn't be that intimate, especially like we were saying, when you're dealing with someone of the opposite sex, like they for sure shouldn't know as you're training them about an argument you had with your spouse. It shouldn't be a session about make you feel good and better in your situation. It just opens up too many gateways.
I think there's just always that possibility. And just being in fitness for 25 years, I can just tell you that I've witnessed a lot. And, I think you think that things are so bad in your situation, and then you go and then you find another person that's willing to listen to your situation. You put it all out there, and then suddenly you find this person's super supportive of you, and gosh, they think that, you're in a really bad situation too, and they'd like to see you in a better situation. And you know what? They may know somebody that could help you to get into a better situation, or maybe it's this person, and maybe that person thinks you're attractive, and they finally start telling you that you're attractive. It's just been year after year and marriage after marriage that I've watched just slowly start to trickle into this danger zone. And the reality is that the person that asked you if you would be considerate and take out the trash is never going to be the person that person's never going to look overly sexy to you at that moment when they're
think it's sexy
asking
when you take the
if you
trash
can
out.
be considerate, right? But I've always said, John, I think you're super sexy. Would you please take out the trash? Now,
she
at
really
this,
does, and I'm always like,
At
okay.
this point,
feel like
I
just
don't
got
need
tricked,
to ask
but-
John to take out the trash. He just ought to, he's always taking out the trash. But at the end of the day, you just want to be cautious and just be aware of who you're opening the door to and who you're willing to allow to take on your personal information, because that's just how the enemy creeps in and will cause division in your marriage. Your private thoughts and your relationship really should be kept private, and it shouldn't be shared with, like, I'm not going to share things with another man, and I'm not going to be caught, alone with another man. I really just want to be around my husband, and I want to save that time for my husband. So hopefully that information is helpful to people, because I've definitely see it lead over the years to really like the demise or just the downfall in a lot of marriages. Now, this show has been brought to us by Integrity Training Systems. For more information on what we do, take a look at integritytrainingsystems.com. Also, for gluten-free, dairy-free baked goods delivered to your doorstep, take a look at sophiesbakery.com. And for 100% grass-fed meat, the only meat that the Morris family will eat, take a look at fedfromthefarm.com.